I feel like certain companies, like after they realize like an employee or employees aren't that engaged, they try to make that criteria for like promotion and rewards and all that kind of stuff.
That's how they get
You get
you.
exactly. Oh,
That's
in order for you to get promoted or to get a good
yeah,
reward,
yeah,
you need to show that you're contributing to like DNI,
yeah.
which is their way of saying you need to show up to these company events and
Right,
social hours and
right.
all these different kinds of things. Welcome back to the podcast. I started this podcast as a way to help Black men in all aspects of our lives. Studies show on average we lose 2.8 years of our life when we're under heavy stress. And I think we can gain those 2.8 years back if we express ourselves healthily. Stick with me as I interview therapists, doctors, advocates, activists, and friends about how we can be better as Black men and as a Black community. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube and following us on Instagram and TikTok, you'll definitely want to do that. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, listen, we're back with another episode. We're here with John. John, you are a therapist.
Therapist, social worker, school social worker,
Okay.
business owner,
Mm-hmm.
father.
Mm.
Few titles, few different titles.
All that has. And then just so that people know, how long have you been practicing or seeing clients or however you want to call it? How much experience do you have?
Sure. So I've been doing psychotherapy for 2 years.
Okay.
I was doing life coaching before that since 2020.
Okay.
So
Okay.
altogether around like 4 years.
Dope.
Yeah.
And you're a new dad.
Yeah.
New dad.
Yeah. New dad, man.
Okay. Listen, man, we connected a while ago, and then we did a Thanksgiving panel.
Yeah.
For those of you guys that don't know, Thanksgiving, it's like a tech conference. I would say primarily for Black people. That's in DC. Really dope conference, really dope event. And so we had a panel there where we talked about like workplace trauma and stress and how to navigate that. I feel like the panel wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
No, and we didn't put it on the podcast
like
either. So
20 minutes?
yeah, you know what I'm
Something like
saying?
that.
Exactly, right? So I wanted to have a longer conversation about workplace trauma and stress and how that impacts Black men. So first of all, can you define what that is? What is workplace trauma? What is workplace stress?
Sure.
And how do we know if a Black man in our lives or us ourselves are dealing with that?
Yeah, sure. Workplace trauma and workplace stress is basically any high level trigger or stressor that occurs at work, right? So like every job could be stressful on some level, right? But if it's to the level that it impacts like your functioning, your energy levels, excuse me, beyond like your typical energy, but more so like your mental health, how you show up outside of work. So like how you show up to your family, how you show up for yourself. Any dynamic at work that's negatively, like deeply negatively impacting your lifestyle and your sense of self.
So what's some common signs, right? Like that a Black man may be experiencing that?
It can vary, and it's interesting because a lot of us mask it, right? So it's hard to even see the signs. I would say obviously for everyone it can be different. It can range from, again, back to how you show up outside of work, right? So like how you may come home to your family or to your loved ones, the energy that you bring home. It can affect even even in studying this topic, one thing that came up was even how people show up to work, right? Like whether or not you show up to work on time. Some people, and I used to be a high school teacher, and some of the friends I made in my teaching career, they experienced this and shared with me that they would get up on time, like they would wake up on time, but they would lay in bed and like delay starting their day because their job was so stressful, and so they would get to work late because they would delay their start so much, and that was due to workplace trauma. That was due to racism that they would experience from like the administrations they were working with. Teaching jobs are stressful, so like challenges with students and things of that nature. So it can vary from how you start your day, the stress that you bring into your day, the stress that you bring home. I think identifying it at work is when if you have employees who may not be as present or engaged at their jobs. So that could be from the social side of things, like not showing up to maybe some of like the social events, whether happy hours or Christmas parties or what have you. It could be, you know, really just not engaging with their work as much. Um, Sometimes that can be perceived as like antisocial, right? Or,
Yeah.
uh, you know, not wanting to be a part of the work culture of environment. But then also back to it's kind of like a cyclical um, dynamic
Right.
because you can be identified as antisocial,
Mhm.
but that could also be because of the stresses and the trauma at work that push you away from people.
Mm.
So there are a lot of pieces that can go into it,
Yeah.
but I think to bring it all back, a lot of the warning signs or indicators that someone is dealing with workplace trauma or workplace stress is if it negatively impacts their life in and outside of work.
Man, I the reason why I'm smiling when you were talking is because I literally felt seen. When you're
I was about
talking
to say
about
it's relatable.
yeah, I was like, damn, this is so relatable, bro. When you're talking about the social hours, bro,
Yeah.
please don't send me no work, social hour,
Yeah.
happy hour. I
Yep.
don't want to see y'all after work, bro.
Right, right.
I don't, at 5:01 hits, the laptop is
Nah,
closed.
facts.
I'm good, bro.
Yep,
Don't hit me with no social hour. We playing a
yep.
social event. We doing this scavenger hunt. This we doing a
Yeah, it's not
quiz game.
happening,
Like
yep.
I'm good off of all of that,
But
bro.
this could be a contributor to workplace trauma too, is
Okay.
I think workplace cultures,
Okay.
right? Because if you're in a workplace, if you have a job that where you're the only black person
Right.
or, you know, there's a lack of representation and maybe even a lack of representation of people that you relate to. Because
Right.
hiring another black person doesn't mean that you're gonna get along with them or that y'all may have like a similar cultural background.
Right.
So like even to that social aspect, that could also be a significant catalyst for
Yeah.
that too.
So workplace culture constitutes of multiple things.
Mhm.
It's the culture that leadership sets,
Right.
but then it's also the
It's a
culture
big
that
one.
your manager sets.
Manages everything, bro.
Right. There's two different cultures,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's a
Because
fact.
when you go on the company website, everybody's culture
Right,
sounds
right,
amazing.
right.
Everybody's
That's
culture.
a fact.
Oh, we're a growth mindset. We do
Yeah.
this, we do that. We want to take care of you.
Yep.
Unlimited time off.
Yeah.
Then you get the
Yeah.
job, and then you realize unlimited time off really isn't unlimited time off.
Right.
It's when your manager decides
Right,
that he's
right.
comfortable or she's comfortable with you
Yep.
taking that time off. Growth mindset or like flexibility isn't really flexibility. It's when your
Yeah.
manager decides they want to implement that aspect of the
That's a
culture
fact.
that leadership is passing down. So really, there's two different types of culture. There's a culture
Yeah.
that you see on a website, and then there's the culture that you experience as a result of the manager that you have.
Right.
And I think my
Right.
manager tries to do it. He does a good job with the culture for sure.
Mhm.
But I think the problem that I sometimes see in my 9 to 5 is that
Yeah.
although he's doing a good job with the culture because of all the other teams that I'm interacting with and all the different
Mhm.
cultures and stuff, it ends up just being like, yes, in our culture is it's cool,
Right.
but because I have to interact with so many different teams and I have all these different kind of they have all these different type of managerial styles and cultures
Yeah.
in their team, it leads to that workplace stress and that workplace trauma where I'm just like, you know what, bro, I don't even want to. I'm still gonna do my job. I'm still
Right.
gonna do it efficiently and do what I need to do. But I don't want to I don't want to be involved with
Lack of
anything.
lack
I,
of engagement.
you know,
Beyond the basics.
right, exactly. Like, and then this is the thing too. Like, I feel like certain companies, like, after they realize like an employee or employees aren't that engaged,
Right.
they try to make that criteria for like promotion and rewards and all that kind of stuff.
That's how they get
You get exactly.
you.
Oh,
That's
in order for you to get promoted or to get a good
Yeah.
reward,
Yep.
you need to show that you're contributing to like D&I,
Yeah.
which is their way of saying you need to show up to these company events and
Right.
social hours and
Right.
all these different kind of things. And it's like, bro, like, why am I being punished
Yeah.
for your lack of like building a culture that makes me want to show up?
Right.
Instead of like you creating culture that makes me want to show up, you're putting
Yeah.
all the onus on me to just show up to whatever it is that you've created.
And that's by design.
Man,
Right.
bro.
Because these organizations are designed, at least in their founding,
Mhm.
to exclude us.
Mm,
Right. So
mhm,
like DEI, DEIJ, these are relatively new systems,
mhm.
right? Like I think everyone started to start that conversation. 2020, George Floyd. That's when that conversation became more popular.
Right.
And when companies started to identify the need. But even as we see now, a lot of those jobs are being pulled back. A lot of DEI programs have been eliminated or very restricted. And so these spaces are still not for us. Right. We can see it in the numbers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think, of course, if you're a good employee coming to work on time, you're hitting the basics.
Yeah.
They have to find other ways to exclude you or even remove you from that position. And it may not be a direct manager, not specifically in your case, but I'm just generally speaking.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's more systemic than it is individual.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit because I feel like when we talk about workplace trauma, workplace stress, people sometimes don't have an exact example of like what may be occurring and what may be contributing to that. Like I know we're talking about leadership and managerial styles and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Can you explain what microaggressions are,
Mm.
right? And then how does that potentially contribute to workplace trauma or stress in the context of Black men specifically?
So all right, so starting with microaggressions are more covert
Mm.
and minimized forms of aggression based on I'm gonna even take it outside the context of race. I would say based on another person's identity or multiple identities. Right. So if we're speaking in the context of race, it could be something as simple as, or not even simple, but something as covert as a manager clocking you for coming in late consistently, whereas a white coworker who may come in late just as consistently or maybe even more is not penalized or spoken to, right? So it's not a blatant form of racism, but these are like, again, covert forms that when you experience a multitude of these aggressions can severely affect your mental health because it contributes to that feeling of isolation or being targeted in the workplace.
I like the way you broke that down. That was a really nice description.
Appreciate it. I'll give you an example too.
Yeah, please.
Or another example, like when I started teaching, my first year teaching, I started teaching in special education. And so our special education program at the school that I was in, it had many flaws in it, but if I were to summarize it, it was basically a program to keep the students who got in the most trouble isolated from the rest of the students, whether or not they had a learning disability or behavioral disability. And so in my first year, these students have historically been lower performing students. And so my first year, I taught them, and on their test scores, they showed improvement, but they were still, below average, and weren't students who were succeeding. But I also was, I was teaching them with a few other special education teachers as well. So we would like rotate for different learning subjects. And my manager, like my direct manager, was concerned about my students' test scores that were higher than my co-teachers who were white teachers, white women teachers, whose students had lower test scores for the subjects that they were teaching them in. But they weren't given that one-on-one. And I found this out later in speaking to them. I was like, did so-and-so speak to you about, how your kids performed? They're like, no, they didn't say anything. But then I had like a one-on-one based on my kids' test scores. And so even though that's not, my manager didn't call me the N-word or like, it wasn't an overt form of racism or even targeting, but just that, again, back to microaggressions, that covert way of penalizing you or targeting you or micromanaging or monitoring how you show up and the work that you do can be a significant contributor to workplace stress.
Oh man, let me not get myself in trouble here, bro.
We're gonna leave some names out of it.
No, for sure. Names are gonna be left out for sure. Like, there's no need for any of that. But like, I've had my fair share of like microaggressions, and I didn't even know they were microaggressions until like I had a training that I did at work, and you take these trainings at work, and you just kind of like speed through them. But somebody was like, "Yo, I just took a microaggressions training." And it was really good. So I said, you know what? Let me see. Let me watch this training. And as I'm watching the training, they're going through a scenario where there's a woman that's pregnant, and her manager is basically like saying like, hey, I know you had this big project, but I know there's a high likelihood that you're not going to be able to complete it because of the fact that you're pregnant.
Right.
Like that's a microaggression in itself. It's
Right,
just like
right.
you're basing the fact that she can't complete it because she's pregnant. And then
Yeah.
I started realizing, and I started comparing it to some of the things that I dealt with. I'm like,
Right.
yo, like I've dealt with that. Like where
Right.
people give my manager feedback about my performance and they'll say
Right,
certain
right.
things about like, oh, you know, he asks too many questions or like, you know, he
Right.
doesn't go and do the research before. And so like I'll get the response that, or I get the feedback that here's a growth opportunity for you. You know,
Right.
instead of asking a question or asking somebody to do something, you know, you need to explain before you ask them like what you've done so
Right.
that they know that you've done something at least. And then you can ask them the question. And that's
Mm.
literal feedback.
So you have to justify asking a question.
You get what I'm saying? That's literal feedback that I've gotten. That
Right.
you have to justify the work that you've done first
Right.
before you can even ask a question
Yeah, that's wild.
or ask somebody to do
Yeah,
something.
that's wild.
You know how crazy that
Yeah.
is? Like, can you imagine? I need something quickly,
Right.
but because you feel like I don't do work outside of just asking you questions,
Yeah.
I have to now spend the extra work
Right. Right.
justifying that I actually have researched something
Yeah.
just to appease the fact, just to appease you so you feel more comfortable potentially
Right.
giving me a response.
Right.
Because
Right.
oftentimes what will end up happening is I ask a question and people will be like, oh, you can go search for that here. It's like, bro,
Yeah.
I'm not asking you a question for you to tell me where to go. I'm asking you a question for you to give me the answer so I can go on with what I need to do.
So you're in essence, you're still not even getting what you need.
I don't get what I need. You get what I'm saying? But they'll say, oh, you know, we're more than comfortable with you asking questions.
Right.
This is an environment where we want everybody to feel welcomed and stuff. But it's like, no, y'all are not.
And
Because
I think
when I do ask these questions, this is what I met with.
right.
So it's
Yeah.
like, bro, I'm telling you, bro.
No, it's real.
It's super real, bro.
So I think there's two parts to it.
Go ahead.
For one, as you mentioned earlier, right? Most organizations, they present themselves to be like these progressive, supportive, culture driven and focused organizations. But
Yeah,
a lot of that's political, right?
for sure.
It's to be politically correct because you can't get on your website and say, "Hey, we don't really treat our employees the best," right? Like you're trying to you're trying to attract folks to your company and build value in it.
Right.
But then to the point about microaggressions, I think that's the key too. Is that many microaggressions happen on a subconscious level.
Right.
So many managers or employees, whoever, who are practicing microaggressions are often not even aware that what they're doing or saying is a microaggression.
Right.
And that's also what makes microaggressions or any form of discrimination insidious as well, is because people are unaware that they're even doing this.
Yeah.
So what is the preventative measure that you take? Because I've seen, as you said earlier, right, these these workplace trainings. I've seen folks sit down and do these trainings
and nothing changes.
And then the next day they're still
doing the same.
So it's not that you can't hold people accountable or that behaviors can't be changed.
Yeah.
But people have to be willing to do the internal work
to
change their behaviors. Because we could have a million trainings. You can train them every day.
Yeah.
But if they're not invested, if there's no engagement,
you're
gonna get the same results.
There's a couple of things here. So one, I play a role in this in the sense that because I've dealt with this so much, I just internalize it and I don't even have the conversation with my manager about it because I'm just like,
that's real.
Me having a conversation with you is either going to lead to one, me getting attacked even more.
Right.
Like even me having this episode right now is a
right.
potential that somebody at work may potentially see it, may lead to unnecessary stress for me. Right. So I'm very well aware of that fact, which is why I don't open up and talk about it. That's one. Two, me opening up and talking about it, I have to really and truly trust that if I open up and talk about it, that something is going to happen.
Right.
And in the back of my head, with what I've experienced and what I know about people in these systems, I don't necessarily think something is going to really change because I feel like there is, especially when it comes to, and I'm not going to say I hate to bring race into it because I don't hate to bring race into it. Race is in everything. Like I hate when people say, oh, why you bring race? Race is literally in everything. It's in everything, right? So especially as a Black man, I told my manager this one time, right? I was like, yo, when I got that specific feedback, like, hey, you're asking questions, but people don't know if you've done work behind like the question. I was like, there's an assumption of negligence.
Right. Right.
There is an assumption of negligence.
Right.
They're assuming that I'm negligent at my job. I'm not doing my job. Because if you're assuming that I'm asking you a question and that I haven't done the work behind it before I came to the point of asking you a question, you're assuming I'm not doing my job.
Right.
You're assuming I'm just literally sitting here, information comes my way, and I'm like, let me just ask this guy.
Yeah.
You're assuming I did nothing up until that point, to the
Right.
point where you're literally saying that my response shouldn't just be a question, it should be justification of what I've done.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So I explained that to him. I'm like, yo, there's assumption of negligence. I don't know if he necessarily got it in that moment or understood where I was coming from. But for me, like that was one of the most heated moments I've ever had in my, like in a workplace, like environment.
Right.
Where I literally was hot, bro. And I had to like, I knew he knew I was mad.
Yeah.
But I still had to like contain it because I didn't want to come off as like super unprofessional and like irate, because then that feeds into it even more. If like you're getting feedback and because you're getting this feedback, you can't even take feedback. But it's not the fact that I can't take feedback. It's the type of feedback that I'm being given. If you're telling me, hey, this client came to us and they told us this and this was going on and you didn't explain something properly, cool, I understand.
Right.
I'll do better. But if you're coming to me with something like, yo, you're asking questions and you're not giving your reasoning behind the question, you're giving me more work for something that if we're all on the same team, I shouldn't necessarily have to deal with that. Does that person have to come and justify to me what they've done before they ask me a question, or do they ask me a question and I just give them what they need?
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So like that, when you start looking at it from that lens, like, does everybody experience this? And is this a company-wide thing?
Right.
Or are we only telling this person to do this? Or are we only expecting this from this person? Or are we assuming this of this person because of who they are? I think that is how we answer your question of like, how do we get it to change within the company culture? People have to be willing to really stop and think like, okay, is this feedback and process improvement or process change specifically just for one person?
Right.
Or is this a system-wide process that we're implementing?
Yeah.
Do we want everybody, every time they ask a question, to say, hey, this is what I've done before I got to this question? Or do we want people to just feel comfortable asking questions? You get what I'm saying?
But
go ahead.
The question that you're asking right now of whether or not you implement it company-wide or you keep it on an individual level, I think that goes back to equity, right? And just having a culture that's fair for everyone.
Right.
Which unfortunately a lot of workplaces avoid that labor. But then back to, again, the topic of workplace trauma and stressors, especially for Black folks, that often, whether or not we embrace it or not, that often becomes our labor. Right. Even just thinking of that, even just like you said, you were heated in that moment, even just having to go through the emotional labor of, oh, is this racist, or was this targeted towards me, or was this did other people have this experience, right? Like that alone is stressful, because now that's added on to, like, work should be work. Now this personalizes the experience, so then I don't know how you processed it moving forward, but for other folks that could look like, okay, I had this bad experience at work. Now I'm going back to my family with a different type of energy, right? Now I'm going into my personal life with a certain type of frustration because at work I'm isolated. At work I feel like I'm not being seen, I'm being discriminated against, I'm being targeted, et cetera, et cetera. And I really want to emphasize in that we often are burdened with that labor, whether we want to take on that labor or not. And oftentimes we don't want to. But that emotional experience is likely to happen at some point in your life as a Black employee or worker.
Yeah, no, that's very true, bro. I think in the moment, bro, I was just like, you know what? It is what it is. I was definitely tight though, bro. Like I was super tight. I was like, you know what? It is what it is, bro. Because me like vocalizing this anger right now at my manager, who is not directly responsible for this. Like this is a different employee that I was having like an engagement with that then had a conversation with my manager.
Gotcha.
And what made it even
They was snitching on you.
Nah, not even that, bro. What made this situation even worse, bro, is my manager was asking for feedback on my performance as part of a process, as part of like promotion process.
Oh wow.
Right.
Okay.
So this
particular coworker use that opportunity to
then
bring up this.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
Oh man, that's
you know what I'm saying? I was like, wow, I would never. I don't care how much I don't mess with you at work. If your manager comes to me and they're like, yo, we want to promote this person, I'm never gonna use that as an opportunity to down that person. Because for me, that's your livelihood.
Yeah.
You could need that promotion money for family. You could have a kid coming. You could have kids that are going to college. But that's just me. I'm empathetic. I'm always thinking in that way.
Yeah.
Not everybody thinks like that. And I think that was what was making me even more heated. It wasn't the fact that you just gave the feedback.
Right.
Because you can give the feedback at any point in time and it's not necessarily going to harm me. But you gave the feedback in a way in which it made my manager question whether he should promote me or not, which then impacts my bag. And you knew very well that is what was going to potentially happen when you gave that feedback.
It was intentional.
It was very intentional. You could have literally came to me and just had that conversation like, yo, bro, sometimes you ask these questions and I feel like you're not even doing nothing behind the scenes and you just want me to do your work for you. I'd have been more than willing to have that conversation and be like, nah, bro, that's not what it is. Like literally I'll sit down and do the work, but sometimes I really don't know. And I'm coming to you because I feel like you're more knowledgeable in this area.
And
bro,
that is wow. And I agree with, so that last point too, I think there's a lot of value in that, right? Like the example you just gave of like really having that conversation openly. And it just made me think of a lot of corporate structures the cultures are cutthroat, right? That's just the nature of it. And usually in cutthroat environments, it's almost like the totem pole, right? It's like whoever's, whoever's last on the totem pole is, who gets cut the most, right? And so oftentimes there's people who look like us. It's challenging, but I think it's possible for there to be more communal cultures in workspaces rather than cutthroat cultures. How to create it, that's the question mark, right? Because I do DEI work, right? I forgot to mention that in the beginning, but I'm a DEI consultant. So I go into organizations and work on this kind of stuff, right? And a lot of times I'm working with a small group of people, a DEI committee or, some smaller group of leadership who are trying to work on these issues. But when you're trying to implement it company-wide, that's where the challenge comes in.
That's where you have to create a process, and creating a process, that's the hard work that you just explained. Like often gets put on us, right? Like we have to deal with the results of the process not being created.
Mental and emotional labor.
Yes, the mental and emotional labor, bro.
And we're often not compensated the way we should be for that kind of labor.
Right. Of course, because why would you compensate somebody for a labor that shouldn't even exist in the first place? Right. That if you acknowledge it exists, you have to acknowledge a much bigger problem that you have.
For sure.
You get what I'm saying? So it's just, bro, it is crazy. I was just gonna ask you, so what are some of the things that we can do to combat some of these microaggressions that we sometimes experience in the workplace?
I think I'll say on the individual level.
Okay.
Right. Because on a systemic level, again, it does take a lot of work. And it does, if you're navigating this on an individual level, it might seem almost helpless if you're looking at it from a systemic point of view and you don't have the supports that you need or you don't have a solid team to support you. So I think on an individual level, definitely it's unfortunate that the labor kind of falls on us, but I do think there's value in having those conversations. It doesn't necessarily need to be with a group at work or in a larger space, but for example, when you had the issue with your manager, that one-to-one could have happened. Maybe not in that moment, right? When you were heated, but in maybe a week later, maybe a few days, whatever amount of time it took you to process it, and have that conversation. I think the more we have those conversations, because even to create a system, right, you do have to have a multitude of one-to-one and individual connections, and conversations. And so I think, again, if you're not someone who is necessarily aiming to reshape the system and you just want to reshape your experience, I think having those conversations more, advocating for conversations like this, right? Even if you're not in a position where you experienced a microaggression or even an overt form of aggression, recently, but this is a topic that, or an issue that you want to resolve in your workspace. I think even just pushing the conversations. Like I know like different workspaces, they sometimes invite internal employees to like lead certain trainings.
Yeah.
Or to have like town halls, things of that nature. So really just making those conversations and the education around it more popularized. But it does take time.
No, absolutely. I love what you talked about having the conversations. I think that's really important. Like I said earlier, I haven't done a good job of having these conversations with the people involved.
They're difficult.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it is that they're difficult. The other part of it is that I'm not willing to go through the difficulty unless I know for a fact that the result is going to be changed. And I think because I can't guarantee that there will be change, my mind processes it as, what's the point of going through that difficulty, right? What's the point of creating that uncomfortability if you know for a fact, or if you don't know for a fact that it's going to lead to a positive outcome? I don't think that's necessarily the right thought process to have, but I think that's what creates a blockage for me, because it's like I could be potentially impacting my livelihood and the livelihood of the people around me just to have a conversation about changing a system and not being sure that that change would actually even occur, or that it would be a positive change.
Let me ask you this, right?
What's
because everybody's situation, you know, is different depending on like the people and the dynamics, right? But in the situation that you had, is or was there a way to again have that conversation at a later point where your emotions are not as high, and have it in a way that is diplomatic enough to protect your position in the company?
So let me clarify, right? In all of this, my manager is not a bad man. I would never say my manager is a bad manager.
Right.
He's actually a really good manager.
Got you.
Most of what I'm talking about is, and a lot of like the resolution of what we just discussed.
Right.
The reason why that hasn't happened is because blockages on my part. For me as a person, like I just when it comes to problems and conflict, I have an avoidant type when it comes to that. Like I don't really like, especially at work, I don't want to have that. Like even thinking about having the conversation makes me want to vomit. Like true. Right. So for me, I think it's more so like I don't even want to approach this conversation or have this conversation at all. Like I think in the moment when it happened, I gave him my like knee-jerk reaction because I was going through my emotions and still processing stuff. And I told him like, yo, there's an assumption. Like I literally told, I said, there's an assumption of negligence here. I said it multiple times. I said, there is an assumption of negligence here. I said, I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. But I also do believe there is an assumption of negligence. You're assuming that I just don't do the work beforehand. To the point where I have to explain what I'm doing. So I could have definitely came back and like explained my point. But again, that's emotional, mental labor that I shouldn't necessarily have to do. And on top of that, it's like when you mix that, when you combine that emotional, mental labor that I don't want to do with the fact that I'm also avoidant when it comes to conflict, with the fact that even if I do all of these things, there's a potential that it wouldn't even change. And I'm potentially creating an environment where now people look at me as, oh, that's the problematic dude that should give feedback. You know, when you combine all of that, for me, it just computes as
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
I feel like
you get what I'm saying. It's just not worth it. So I feel like when it comes to like these microaggressions, I'm not saying people have to take my approach. I honestly don't think my approach is healthy. It leads to a lot of like, I'll talk to Naima after work, yelling. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not a great approach.
Taking it back to outside of work.
Exactly. How it deals. Bro, the amount of conversations I've had with Naima at the work where I'm literally just pissed off, yelling, explaining to her like why this is stupid and why I'm so frustrated at what I have to do. But the fact that I had to do it just because, like that is not healthy. So I don't think my approach right here is like this is not advice that I'm giving people. I'm letting people know like this is just the reality of what my situation is.
Don't try this at home.
And seriously, bro. I know we in a crib right now. Like, do not do this. If you feel like you have a manager where you can have these conversations, bring it up with them because it's gonna change their environment. And I will say this too. When I do open up sometimes and start to like have certain conversations with my manager and express certain things, he has been very supportive.
Yeah.
He has been super supportive. He'll go and talk to the people involved and he'll advocate for me. And that's what I'm saying, he's a good manager.
Yeah.
I'm just not willing to bring up everything. And I think that's because, one, I don't want to create any more like divide in some of the relationships that I have with my coworkers.
Okay.
And I also don't want to consistently have to like mention feedback and that create potential like conflict. And I think that's what it is. I'm conflict adverse. Right. So like I don't want to deal with the conflict of it.
Right.
And because I don't want to deal with the conflict of it, I don't bring it up. But it's not because I don't feel like I have a space to bring it up, and I don't feel like if I bring it, it's not because I don't feel like if I bring it up, it will lead to like negative things. Like I just feel like I don't necessarily like having to deal with the conflict of you brought something up, and now your manager's gonna go talk to this coworker's manager. It's gonna get back to the coworker. The coworker's gonna, you know what I'm saying? I just don't want to have to deal with the politics of it all, bro.
I feel that, but let me ask you this.
What's up?
Because I think there's a layer there.
Okay, go ahead.
Where a toxic workplace culture or a stressful workplace culture, by nature, just the environment itself and the politics, like you mentioned, is dehumanized. I think work is dehumanized, right? Like you're seen as an employee, a laborer. You're not seen as a person.
No, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But from how you're describing your internal experience, it sounds like it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just me more speculating.
Yeah, go ahead.
It sounds like there's a part that could be almost absorbing that dehumanization. Like
for me.
Right. Like even dehumanizing yourself because you're essentially silencing yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I know you mentioned results earlier. And like why have a conversation if the results are going to be the same?
Right.
But there can be different results. It may not be a result in the system change. But maybe there could be a reclaim of your humanity through the result of you express yourself, black man, right? It's like you're expressing yourself. Like it may not change everything, but like you're advocating for yourself. Even you saying that, there's an assumption of negligence. That's advocating for yourself. That's speaking up for yourself. Right. So like you're still fighting back. It may not be a full-fledged, like, okay, let me explain microaggressions and how this is showing up for you. But I say all that to say that, well, one, to ask that, but also to say that I think just for us as people, especially black folks, reclaiming our voices and reclaiming like our humanity and like taking up space, I think that's a powerful result in itself.
I like that. I like how you just reframed and reworked all of that. That was really good. That was really, really good.
It's important.
Nah, it's true though.
It's important.
That's really true, bro. Because it's like, it doesn't always have to be a systemic change or a change in the way they act.
Right.
It could just be the simple fact that for me, it has led to me opening up more and feeling more comfortable expressing. That's really good, bro. I'm gonna keep that with me for sure. I don't know if I'm necessarily gonna break up the situation that happened in the past because that was a while ago. But I think as I move forward and things happen, I will be more vocal. And I have been, like I have seen that positive shift. Like recently something happened with a coworker where I knew they were frustrated and they spoke in a certain way, in a certain tone to me. And I was just like, oh, fuck no. I said, oh, hell no.
Yeah, they're going to try you at some point.
I said, this motherfucker is wildin'. I said, yeah, hell no. But I said, you know what, bro? Let me not lose my job.
Right.
Let me relax. Let me just go talk to my manager. Let me explain to him what happened. Let me ask him what his input is on this whole situation. And that's what I told him. My manager's very supportive.
Yeah.
Like, so he was like, oh, nah, that shouldn't happen. Let me go talk to him. This is it's a priority of mine. I'm texting him right now as you're talking to me. And went and had a conversation with him. And then the guy came back and apologized to me. Right. So like, I have been taking up more space.
Yeah.
I think the situation that I mentioned to you was something that happened like a year, actually earlier, like late last year.
Okay.
And that was kind of like the turning point for me where I was like, oh, I'm not about to keep on just like, for the sake of going along, getting along, just to, go along, right? Like I'm not doing that because these dudes ain't moving like that. You can't play the game. You can't play the game with rules that other people don't have, right? Like I can't be out here moving Like, oh, I'm not gonna say nothing about nothing because I want to keep the peace. And other people were just out here causing war, starting wars.
That's a fact.
You know what I'm saying? I have to play the same game that they're playing. Maybe not to the same extent. Maybe not being like real super nasty with certain things, but I do have to advocate for myself, like you said, because if I don't, then it leads to conversations after work with Naima where I'm pissed off. And sometimes that does happen. You have to pick your battles. You can't do it with everything.
For sure.
But with certain things where you know for a fact, like, nah, this is wrong. And if that's really itching at you, you have to be able to speak up. So like in certain situations I do. And I think I have seen that positive shift in myself. So I do recognize that. And I do think what you said is very, very important. It doesn't always have to be a shift in the culture with the company, but it can be a shift in your mindset and like how you frame things and how you think about things that allows you to be more human. Because that's what we're trying to get to with this platform for sure, bro. All right, I'm interrupting this podcast episode to let you guys know to leave a review on the podcast. Please, 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 if you are listening to this episode and you're finding value in this episode, you're enjoying the conversation, or you've enjoyed a previous episode or conversation, and it's safe to operate your phone right now, please leave us a review. Your review is a free and easy way to support us, and it helps us reach more people like you. We're on a mission to build a stronger, more connected Black community, starting with Black men. And you can help us on that mission by taking a minute out of your day to leave a review. Your review helps us generate more listeners, which in turn generates more revenue, allowing us to expand the platform even further. So please take a few seconds out of your day. I know you're busy. I understand. I know you're doing a lot, but it will help us greatly if you would just take a few seconds out of your day to leave a review right now. Did you leave a review yet? All right, let's get back to the episode.
Everything that's suppressed, it doesn't go away. Right. You just tuck it somewhere. So that frustration, like you said, it's gonna show up whether it's in a conversation with your lady, whether you're going about your day, it could show up in road rage, right? Like there's so many ways that emotions can be transmuted and expressed. And often when we don't express it in the context that they deserve to be expressed in, gets expressed in a different context in an unhealthy way because now it's not direct, right? It's kind of like when every time I see someone have road rage, or even when you hear about situations where people like senseless crimes or people commit acts that just don't really fit the situation. I always think of like what other situation pushed you to act that way. Like you weren't really mad at that person that cut you off, right? Something probably happened at work. Something probably happened at home, and you may not have expressed yourself or did your best in that situation to make sure that you were comfortable with it. So now it's being expressed in an unhealthy way.
Misdirected anger. A lot of times, bro.
For sure.
You know when you have a conversation with somebody and they say something that you didn't really think of a response in the moment, or you didn't think of the best response in the moment, and then you get on the road or you move out or something, and you're like, then you start thinking about all the ways you could have responded, and you're like, damn, why didn't you say that? I imagine like that's how a bunch of people are moving on an everyday basis.
That's a fact.
Like just tight that they didn't get to respond to situations the way they wanted to respond. And like you said, now commuting from work or going back home or at a restaurant or at a store, and they have all of this pent up anger, right, and resentment that is actually supposed to be directed toward the person that they were supposed to talk to in the past. But now, at the slightest inconvenience, they're ready to just
crash
snap. Bro, you know how many times when I was younger, I would take the train, rush hour, from like World Trade Center back home, World Trade Center to Jamaica Ave.
You see it all in the train.
Bro, oh my gosh, that's a 1 hour train ride. E-train, that's a 1 hour train ride. And I would see, this is New York. Probably in the middle of the summer, people hot, people tired, they're annoyed after work. Bro, I'm seeing kids rushing the seats, pushing over ladies. You know what I'm saying? People not giving up seats for ladies. Women standing, people getting mad, people pushing each other. Bro, you see so much on a New York public transportation system, bro.
That's a fact.
It's so wild. Like you get to see all of the different like personas and like how people,
full spectrum.
Like how people navigate conflict and how they deal with it. Who goes straight into aggression versus like trying to ease the situation. Like, man, bro. So I related to that a lot because I feel like there's a lot of people that are operating from a place of like stress, and that's coming out in like misdirected anger and frustration towards the ones that they love or the people that they're around, just in the environments that they frequent.
Yeah, definitely. And all that comes back to just being present.
Right.
Like just being present enough in your situation to, face what you need to face in that moment, even if you don't resolve it exactly the way that you would hope. Just being present and allowing yourself to have that full human experience.
Nah, that's a fact. I want to shift the conversation a little bit. I know we said that leadership probably won't do the work, but for the leaders that are probably may watch the podcast or whatever, what are some of the things that they can do to potentially do the work? So I know you say you do a lot of DEI consulting. Like, what are some of the things that you work with leaders on to create an environment that's more conducive to helping their employees to navigate?
It's really culture development.
Okay.
Right. So before you can develop a culture or a system, you have to develop yourself.
Right.
Right. So we really start with like training leaders on, like we said, microaggressions, so like their own microaggressions, their own traumas, how they identify themselves, and the experiences or how they've interpreted their experiences in relation to their own identities. So processing that, really helping them or pushing them to get to know themselves on a more intimate level.
Right.
So that they can bring that self to their leadership styles and to the culture. Because if you're not being like genuine with yourself and, there are parts of you that you haven't really developed, it's going to be hard to cultivate that kind of culture with other people or support other people in navigating their identities and the challenges that may come with their identities.
Right.
So it really starts with that self-development, that personal development, then strategizing to how we can build culture, whether it's through events, whether it's through, creating spaces where these conversations can happen, and where their employees can feel comfortable to have those conversations.
Right.
Also using like themes. So, for example, there's one organization in Massachusetts I'm working with who we're planning an event called Food for Thought.
Okay.
We're planning to do it monthly, but the next one we're doing is on the topic of substance abuse and overdose, because it's a pretty significant problem in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so we're not just looking at, okay, why do people abuse substances? Why do folks overdose? But also, how does identity play a role in substance abuse? Right. How does identity play roles in the ways that people who are suffering from addiction, how they're supported? Right. Because we see how like Black and brown folks usually are criminalized for their addictions or their substance abuse disorder. Whereas in a lot of predominantly white communities, they have more systems of support. And so really just taking those different aspects of, identity, folks' experiences and how they process them. It's really like a combination of DEI work and mental health work.
Yeah.
And then facilitating conversations in spaces where folks can share and really build connections with each other. That's really what it comes down to. It's just creating cultures where people can connect more in the work context, but not specifically about work. Right. Okay. So that, again, we're seeing the whole human being. It's not just, oh, you're an employee, you're a laborer. So like, here are the rules, here's what you got to do, here's the culture, and, just keep your head down and work. Like, yes, we are laborers in this space for, 9 to 5 or whatever, but we're also people. And so how can we see each other like our whole being? We don't have to share our deepest secrets, but we should at least be able to recognize and work with each other and acknowledge each other beyond just the work that we do.
No, that's a fact, bro. That's a fact. I think my manager does a good job of that, but I just don't be wanting to show up to those things. I just be like, bro.
Let me ask you why.
You ask me why?
Yeah.
Bro, I just be, I like.
There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm just curious.
No. I just don't see, I think my manager does a good job of trying to say we all are family.
They always
But yeah. Like, this is my family. We spend more time with the work, with our coworkers than we do with our actual family. So this is actually family if you think about it. And he makes a great case for that. And I know he truly believes it.
Yeah.
I just don't believe it. And that's a core thing of mine.
Yeah.
My family is my family.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? My family is the people that I grew up in this house
100%,
with, that I'm building a family with.
Yeah.
I would much rather spend that hour with them than my work family.
I feel that.
You get what I'm saying?
That's
and so
real.
for me, that's what computes. It's like, would I rather spend another hour at work with these folks Or would I rather spend an hour with my actual family? You get what I'm saying? And it's like, bro, you're never gonna win that battle.
Right.
So for me, that's what it comes down to. It just comes down to like, this is literally another work meeting.
Right.
Regardless of if we're talking about work or not,
it
is another work meeting. And so it's like, do I really want to go to another work meeting over a date with my girl, or watching Netflix with my girl, or eating with my girl? Talking to my mom, or talking to my pops, or talking to my bro, or talking to my friend? Nah, I don't. So I think what helps with that is planning the work event during work, and not during the lunch break.
Agreed.
During actual work, because then for me, that's a break.
It's leisure,
It's leisure time. Now it's like, okay, you know what? Let me go there. Let me do this thing during work. But if you're gonna plan it at from 5 to 6, I'm never showing up. If you're gonna plan it from 8 to 9, I'm never showing up. If you're gonna plan it on Friday, anytime on Friday,
not happening.
I'm never showing up. And if you're doing it on the weekend, you don't even send me the invite. You know what I'm saying? So like, bro, you have to plan it in a way where it makes sense for your employees. You have to understand 100%. Them and what they have going on, bro. I'm never gonna prioritize a work event that's outside of work hours over actually spending time with my family.
That's real.
Never, bro. I'm never gonna do that.
I agree with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm the same way.
Okay.
And in every job, I actually I probably shouldn't even say this on camera, but I've always been known as that dude who's just like, yo, he just comes to work, does his thing, he's out. Like he just say, what's up in the hallway? How you doing? That's it.
That's
like we're not talking about nothing else. If the only time we're gonna have a conversation if it's work related. Like if you need something from me, cool, you know where to find me. But other than that, don't tell me about your dog. Don't tell me about your kids. I don't care about. It's cool, and it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. I'm just my mindset. Like I'm here to work, and I'm out of here, bro. Like we cool, but stay over there. I'm gonna do my thing.
I feel you.
But I would say, and this is the reason why I want to ask this, because I think for me a shift occurred. I would say within really like the last few years, where I started to look at like those events almost as investments.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Where it's like you do. I think in anything, right? Anything that you want success in, you do have to kind of play the political game to an extent. Even in this work, right? It's like I consider you a creative person, right? And there's probably networking events or opportunities that you may not always be up for, but it's like, okay, I do have to kind of shake hands with folks and smile and, whatever. I tend to look at it from that place. I'm still not the dude that's at every work function, but it's more so like if I socialize a little bit more than I'm used to with some of my coworkers, even if it's just the ones that I rock with, you know, that could help to make my experience here that much better. So that I'm not carrying that weight when I come home, or I'm not as stressed out, because, you know, we may not be the best of friends, but at least my work experience feels lighter now that I'm more connected with my coworkers, managers, etc.
No, I get what you're saying for sure. And I do feel connected to them to a certain degree. But like you, bro, I don't want to know about any of the I will have a small talk conversation. But I don't care. Like, not to be disrespectful. It is not let me not say I don't care. I do care. I just would rather not have the conversation. Let's just get straight into work. Because to me, all of that, like, it's crazy because I do it with my team anyway too. Like I'll force them to talk about how they are. Right. But and I know they're like, bro, what the hell? Let's just get straight into it. But for me, all of that additional conversation of like the 10 minutes of like talking about the weather and what you did over the weekend and what you when you go, what vacation you have planned for the summer. All of that 10 to 15 minutes could have been time where we weren't in this meeting. We could have did the 45-minute meeting and then had the 15 minutes to just go chill to ourselves. Again, talk to family. You know what I'm saying? Like, so why would I spend that time again listening to you talk about your weather? When I could literally be having a deep, introspective conversation with my girl.
Nah, fact. That's a fact.
You know what I'm saying? So like, when I start computing these things, it's like, bro, I understand that that's not the correct way to look at it, because yes, you're still investing time in like learning about your coworkers, and I'm gonna do that. Right. But for me, it's just like, bro, I just give me my time back. Because I can't. That's the only thing I can't get back. And would I rather spend this 15 minutes talking about you guys' weather, or would I rather spend the 15 minutes getting straight into the work so that we can get that 15 minutes back
for sure
at the end of the meeting?
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a logistical issue. I think it's also, from my experience too, it could be a substance issue.
Okay.
And so one thing, I have a homie.
Substance of conversation.
Right.
Okay.
So I had a conversation with a homie who, he also works a high level corporate position.
Yeah.
And we were having a very similar conversation. He was just like, yo, I don't feel like having, the small talk with these executives and stuff. But he's like, I kind of have to because, I got to play the politics.
Right.
And then one hack, simple hack that he told me was he stopped asking people how they're doing. And he would just jump into deeper questions. So he would meet someone and be like, hi, my name is, so-and-so. And then he would be like, what are you passionate about? Right. And he said he noticed the shift in the conversation where folks would be more transparent and the conversation would be realer.
Okay.
And even if it only was for 5 or 10 minutes or so, now that connection is a lot stronger because they're gonna remember you as, okay.
That's the guy to ask me what,
Kids will ask me about something deeper than just like, oh, what's the weather, right?
Right.
So, and then for you, that makes it better because now you're listening to something that you actually might have an interest in. And so the conversation feels more substantial. So you're walking away with something. And so now you have, your day is not as dull and you're connecting with folks on a deeper level. So you're developing those connections at work. And still playing the politics.
Yeah. No, I like that.
The BS.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Because I find myself when I talk to my coworkers, because there's certain coworkers that I know what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And when they talk about that thing, I'm interested in actually having that.
Right.
Like that, I'll have a conversation about.
Right,
like I'll listen to them talk about things that they're passionate about. We're gonna talk about the weather, bro. Like, listen with that. You know what I'm saying? It's sunny. Or it's raining. Like outside of that, bro, I really don't care, bro.
No, that's real, man.
Anyway, like yo. They just be killing me with that, bro. Then they ask me, what's your weather? I'm like, bro, can we just... Come on, bro.
That's real.
Well, what are we doing here?
I feel you.
So let me ask you this, right? For the black men that are in these corporate jobs that are like, bro, you know what? I hear all of this. I don't care. I want to leave. I'm not doing any of this. This is not the place for me. This place is way too toxic.
Right.
What advice would you give for them to help them navigate like that transition in itself?
Not to sound cliche, but I really think I believe it comes back to purpose and where you feel purposeful. I'm not saying you should have your whole life's purpose figured out because obviously that's a grand like existential question, and you may not have the answer to that. But what makes you feel purposeful? What makes you feel like your time is well spent? Because anything you decide to do, even your passions, are not going to come easy. There's always going to be politics. There's always going to be some type of conflict or some type of disappointment. So you could quit your job today, but the next job you're going to have frustrations. Or if you decide to become an entrepreneur, you're going to have your frustrations, and you have to figure out how to feed yourself because you're not getting a check every 2 weeks, or every week or whatever, right? So like, there's not even to say the grass isn't always greener, but I think just if you follow the purpose question, where do I feel purposeful? How would I ideally spend my days?
Right.
And what would be most meaningful? I think that's a good compass for what to do next. And also, do you feel that in your current position you've optimized your potential? Right? Because sometimes you may leave earlier than you need to, or sometimes you may have an issue that could be resolved if you just shifted your mindset a little bit or developed maybe a relationship with someone you work with a little bit, and you may have a completely different experience. So do you feel that you've done your best to make that situation one that you fully benefit from?
Right.
Have you optimized that potential, or is there still work that you can do in that space? And maybe not the work that you do, maybe not the labor, but work, whether it's for yourself or your relationships or mindset.
No, I like that, bro. I like that a lot. And I like the fact that you talked about like the financial pressures of pursuing like entrepreneurship over a traditional 9-to-5. I think oftentimes for the brothers that are only working a 9-to-5 and may not have like a side hustle or doing something on the side, that financial pressure of knowing that they're the protector or the provider, and they're the provider in their household also adds to that workplace trauma and stress, because it's like, bro, I'm stressed out at work and I can't leave this job because this is the only thing that I have in order for me to provide for my family.
Right.
And it's real difficult, bro. It's super difficult. I wanted to transition the conversation into talking about some of the conversations that I've had with like folks in universities because, you know, I do workshops at different universities. We'll talk on like, you know, masculinity and redefining what that looks like for Black men, or we'll do a conversation on like imposter syndrome and perfectionism, holistic wellness, a bunch of different things, right? Keynotes, workshops, all that, right? And what I've realized when I'm talking to these like folks that are like directors of like academic success and directors of student like retention and all these different kind of things, is they have problems retaining Black men. They have problems with like getting Black men to engage. And what I always tell them is Black men are going to go where they feel seen, heard, and understood, just like every other people. And if you're not creating a system in your campus or your organization where Black men are actually prioritized and feel seen, heard, and understood, Black men are going to leave. Right? So it's going to be very hard for you to retain them and have them engaged. And when I was at school, I went to DSU, Delaware State University. It was an HBCU. It's an HBCU in Delaware. One of the things that we did a good job of there, and when I say we, I mean the students that I was, you know, in community with, is we created that space for ourselves. That's always my advice to folks. Like if they're in a PWI, if they're in an HBCU, like if I'm talking strictly to the students, is to create that space for yourself. Don't wait on like an organization. You don't have to join like a Black organization to do that. You can find some folks around you that share similar values and create that space for yourself. And that's one of the things that I really, really missed the most as I transitioned into adulting, bro, was that space that I had with my brothers, that community that I had with my brothers in college. Once I graduated and I got into adulting, I moved to Massachusetts, bro.
I remember you telling me,
I moved to Massachusetts from being in Delaware while I was at HBCU to now going to Massachusetts where it's basically like predominantly white for the most part. And that experience in itself was so wild. It was such a wild shift. Going from a place where you're seeing everybody that looks like you to being the only person that looks like you in almost all settings. It was a crazy shift. And so I wanted to ask you, how do Black men navigate that transition from like being in college to now going into adulting, having my first job, or potentially going into a new job if they're dealing with like crazy leadership and they want to go navigate into being in a new job? How did they deal with that, like that shift and that transition?
I grew up in Massachusetts too.
Oh, you
so
did?
I definitely feel where you're coming from.
What part? What part of Massachusetts were you in?
Greater Boston area. So like,
so you was in.
So like Malden Lynn was where I grew up.
Okay. I was in Lowell.
Okay. So that's like a little bit further out.
Yeah.
Massachusetts is interesting because it's definitely, you know, predominantly white in most places. But I would say it's segregated.
Okay.
Because there are areas that are very populated with like Black folks, Latino folks, Asian folks. But similarly to, and back to your question, similarly to what you're saying is that point about building community at Delaware State, right? Like if you live in Massachusetts or if you migrate there, you do have to find or build your community. And I think to the point about adulting, it's funny, right? Everything, I would say, until you graduate college, right? Or until you get to that age where, whatever age where you go out on your own, everything is, for the most part, handed to you or accessible. In some way, shape, or form. Like it's convenient. Once you get out on your own, once you graduate, once you kind of start that adult life, everything you want, you have to create for yourself without much help. So that the same thing applies to community. Even if you stay in the community that you grew up in, a lot of folks moved out. A lot of folks, you know, they graduated, they went here, there. So you have to be intentional about creating, and not even just creating, but also maintaining that community. So like something that I've had to learn in my transition to adulthood was, you know, growing up, your friends, you're going to see them every day because y'all go to school together, right? Or y'all live in the same neighborhood. So that's by default. You don't really have to do much work to keep up those friendships. As adults, now like we got jobs, we got work, we got families, you know what I'm saying? We have these different obligations and responsibilities that take up the majority of our time. So if we're not intentional and proactive about building and maintaining our communities, those can be easily lost.
Yeah, bro.
So it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, bro. And it's sad because like those college friends that I had, because we didn't do the work to like maintain that relationship, we barely talked. The group chat that we had is now basically dead. Right? People don't really respond in there. It's like
it's sad because like these are people that you spend so much time with, but you don't necessarily like the relationship doesn't actually continue past college, depending on if you put the work in or not, right? Like so like if you put the work in, like there's a likelihood that it will continue, but if you don't, like what ended up with my college relationships and like how ours played out is like a lot of us didn't put the work in to continue that conversation, and now it's become like kind of like a relic where we'll go in there every so often. You're like, oh damn, this is chat from when we was in college. Oh, somebody came and responded. Oh, it's kind of wild. Like, what everybody's doing, and you either respond or you don't respond. So yeah, it's wild, bro. But like, that adulting transition, bro, is a major, major, major shift. And I didn't realize like the gravity of that shift until I actually took part in it. And what was actually happening for me when I was in Massachusetts is I was dealing with a lot of seasonal depression, bro.
Man, that's a whole topic in itself, bro.
I know. Whew. I was dealing
seasonal.
I was dealing with a lot of seasonal depression. Because in Massachusetts, I had this weird cycle where I would wake up too early to see the sun, and I'll be commuting like right before sunrise.
Okay.
And then on my way back home, it would be like super cloudy and dreary, so I'm still not seeing the sun. And at work, like we barely had, like we either had one window or didn't have windows or whatever the case may be. So it would still be dreary. So I would honestly go, sometimes I would go weeks.
That's wild.
Where I did not see the sun. And it didn't matter what the season was. It just depended on what the weather was.
Were you taking your vitamin D supplements?
What vitamin D supplements? I was taking no damn vitamin D
supplements. Take your vitamin D. Nah. You need vitamin D, man. Seriously, like you will be depressed if you don't have enough vitamin D.
I feel you.
That's essential, but my fault.
No, go ahead. That's a good bar. What you literally
take your vitamin D, man.
You literally went into what I was going to ask you, which is like, how do folks navigate that? Because I know seasonal depression is a huge topic, right? Like we don't got to get too deep into it,
right.
But I feel like for certain folks in certain areas, like they're going to be navigating it regardless, right? So like, how do they navigate it? I know you mentioned the vitamin D. Is there anything else that they could potentially do?
This one resonates because I dealt with seasonal depression, I would say most of my life, bro. Like since I was a kid, and I didn't know what it was until I would say once I got in the mental health field and I was studying and stuff. But before that, bro, I just knew like, when it starts to get cold out, like fall, like once we hit like November, I knew like I'm gonna be moody, like I'm not gonna be in the best shape up until spring. But I would say for folks to navigate seasonal depression, so of course, nutrition. That's the first thing I recommend. Just making sure your nutrition is up to par, taking supplements, taking care of your body, right? Like that comes first because of course, going through the winter, the cold is hard on your body, right? And again, you're not, like to your point, you're not getting enough sunlight. So your body you're physically going through these transitions,
right?
And so you have to keep up with that exercise, getting enough sleep. If you're able to, I know in your situation it was harder to, but if you're able to structure your schedule for you to experience the sun, ideally sunrise and sunset. But if you can't catch those moments, just trying to catch sun during the day. So if you're at work, maybe taking a walk. That's something I used to do a lot. I would, leave my job for, it could be 10 to 15 minutes, take a quick walk, come back, lunch break, go outside for a bit, come back. But definitely getting that sun. So back to the point about community, pouring into community.
Okay.
I think that's what, like this past winter, I was having this conversation with my lady. This past winter was the first winter that I went without experiencing noticeable signs of seasonal depression.
Really? What did you do differently? That's dope, first of all, one.
I'm 31 years old, bro.
Yeah,
that's the first time.
That's dope.
Appreciate it, though. What happened differently? Well, one, it was my first winter with my son.
Okay.
So I think that just changed the dynamic because, he's a baby, so he's always having like positive, I mean, he cries and stuff, but, if I come home, he's smiling, he's turned up. So that was one, but also I think the major changes were keeping up my exercise consistently. So like working out 7 days a week consistently. And I usually would work out at night. So I know a lot of folks recommend working out in the morning to get your energy up. I would work out at night, and I still do, as a form of decompression. So whatever, to the point we were talking about earlier about like workplace stress and just dealing with things throughout the day, that's where I take it out. So go through whatever I go through throughout the day, come home, kick it with the family a bit, eat, whatever. Then I'll hit the gym at like 9, 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And that's where the aggression comes out.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so that helped me tremendously. I would also say, again, back to building community, tapping in with my friends more, seeing my friends more.
Yeah.
I got back into creating this winter. So like working on the Father's Project we spoke about.
Yeah.
And so like really pouring into my creativity. So that became a strong outlet for me. Right. And it required me to connect with my friends more because they're fathers. So, I'm featuring them in the project. So without even realizing it, like this wasn't intentional at all, but like I was building a community through my work because I would have like studio days, set days where multiple fathers are present, multiple friends of mine. Sometimes I'm also a person who, or before I wouldn't really mix friend groups. I'd be
you know what's so crazy? I knew you were gonna. I literally knew. I was like, watch this man say he don't mix friend groups. Bro.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I wasn't mixing, and it wasn't anything against anyone. No one had problems with each other, but I was just like, I always hung out with my friends individually.
Right.
I don't know if it probably was a scheduling thing.
Yeah,
because my friends got kids and stuff like that. So it's like it would take a lot to kind of coordinate, which I did before, but it was hard to. It took like I had to like really plan it. So I'm just like, yo, this man at work. Like if I want to see the homie, just you free tomorrow? Pull up.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was like friend groups were coming together for this project.
Right.
And so we kind of had a purpose there.
Yeah.
And so that helped me a lot. Building that community, the exercise, self-care, and seeing the friends and creating.
Yeah. Do you have friends that are jealous of your other friends? No,
I don't think I ever had that.
Not necessarily like jealous, but like they'll talk about like, I know John gonna go chill with those other dudes, or I know John be chilling with these friends or whatever.
I've never had that.
Are your friend groups aware of each other?
Yeah, they've met each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. The reason why I asked is because my friends are not necessarily. They're not. When I say jealous, I don't mean like jealous and like they're actually jealous. But like, my friend groups are aware of each other. So like, I have one friend group that I do like the podcast stuff with. Right. And then I have another friend group of like my friends that I grew up with when I was young.
I see what you're saying.
I got my podcast friend group. When I chill with my friends when I was younger, they'd be in the group chat like, oh, you chilling with them now? And they make their little jokes, you know what I'm saying? And it's not necessarily jealousy, but it's just that they be peeping, right? So I just wanted to know if that was like a common thing amongst men, like men peep other friend groups, and when they really have a friend that they really mess with,
right?
Like that tugs at certain things.
I would say, I think my friends understand, and I understand for them too, that it's funny because we all function very similarly, but we have different friends for different reasons.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like for example, my homie Juan, he's real into soccer, Colombian dude, born and raised in Colombia. And so he has his soccer friends. Like he has his dudes that like they go to the games, they go hit the bars to watch the game. They're really soccer people.
Right.
And they cool. I've been around them.
Right.
But I think there's an understanding that like I'm not a soccer dude. So it's like if you don't invite me to these functions, like trust me, bro, I'm good. Like I don't want to really be there, but we cool, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I have friends that are for different purposes or even conversations. Like there's some friends that I'm way more transparent with than others. And it's not impersonal, it's just a vibe. So it's like I rock with you. We can have real conversations, but sometimes it may take more energy to do that. Whereas like my homie over here is like, as soon as we link, it's like, yo, bro, this happened this week and this is what's going on with, So I think there's an understanding that it's like, yo, it's different vibes for different people.
Nah, I love that. You have travel friends?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And that's a funny thing too. It's like, I know who to hit for that and who not to.
Right.
And I don't even, it's again, it's not to be exclusionary, but I know what you're capable of, so I don't want to go through the frustration of like, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to include you in the chat and then it's like, bro, I know you're not going to make it out here. So with all due respect, but like, you know what I'm saying? And it's nothing personal. And it's funny because there's that understanding. It's like my friends know, like, yo, if I don't invite you somewhere, it's never personal.
Right.
But we both know what type of time you be on.
Exactly.
So it's like let's not even
don't play the game. Right. Don't get me tight.
Right.
Because if I'm putting you in the chat, that means that you need to pull up.
Right.
If you don't pull up, it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah,
bro, I don't even want to get myself in trouble, bro. I don't want to get myself in trouble. So I ain't gonna
let's not even do the frustration, man. Like we both know how you move and it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. We get at the bar,
and the thing is, you gotta go through the trial and error to get to that point, bro.
You do.
And then at some point you do have to actually experience the frustration with that person
and
realize, like, okay, this is not the person to travel with, or this is not the person to pull up to this event with or do this thing with.
But that's what makes the friendship realer. Because now it's like, I accept you as you are.
Ooh,
you know what I'm saying?
Nah,
like it's cool. Like you and again, different friends serve different purposes.
Yeah.
And so like you said, it's like I had to experience that frustration a few times. And it was like, you know, do I cut this? Nah, I'm not gonna cut him off because he's a genuine good friend.
Yeah.
There's just certain ways that he's not really able to show up, and that's okay. This is, you know, I just know the limitations I have with you.
Nah, that's a fact, bro. Man, I want to end the conversation by asking you, for the man that's dealing with like workplace trauma, the microaggressions, or adulting, any aspect of those things, like what's some words that you want to leave them with? Because I never like bringing up all these things and then leaving people with just figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what's some words you want to leave them with? I know we gave a lot of advice and like different kinds of techniques and tools that they can kind of take with themselves, but just to kind of sum up, what are some things that you want to leave them with for the conversation?
Try to remember that work is just that. It's just work. Work is not your life. Like this is one fraction of your life. It may take up a significant amount of your day, but it doesn't have to exist beyond that. And your experience is less about the external and more about the internal. Right. So not saying it's your fault or that's your responsibility to fix certain situations or systemic factors at work, but your level of happiness or your control over your happiness is greater than what's happening at work. And how you choose to cultivate that happiness is entirely up to you. Nobody else can control that. So that could mean, you know, developing your personal life more in a way that nurtures you more, so that you're not, even if whatever BS is happening at work, it's not weighing on you as much.
Right.
So to give an example, my first teaching job filled with workplace trauma, stress, anger, like the whole list of it. But I survived those 2 years from the friendships that I had and from the experiences that I had outside of work. So like, that was when I dove into photography.
Okay.
That was when I expanded as a creative.
Right.
That's when I was outside like every weekend at some kind of function, not necessarily clubbing and things of that nature, but you know, again, I was into the creative space. So I'm going to galleries, I'm going to things that are cultivating my inspiration, cultivating, you know, really just how I enjoy my life. And so that, along with the friendships that I've built, it made the work experience lighter. It was just a reminder that, again, work is just work. Right. So I'm like, I'm loving my life outside of work. I hate my 9 to 5, but it's bearable because I know that I exist beyond this place. Just back to the point about being human. Yeah. Right? It's like we're so much larger than we even see ourselves. Right. Like, whether it's a job, relationship, whatever, it's like your existence is a lot greater than whatever's in front of you. So I think just coming back to that continuously.
Nah, I love that, bro. Can you please tell the people how they can tap in with you, how they can support? I know you got your merch on, like, how they get that?
Yeah. So thehumangallery.com is where you can find pretty much anything that I'm doing, whether it's merch, creative projects, consulting, therapy, John the Human on whatever social media outlets. Yeah, we can build in a lot of different ways.
Love that. And it's John, Jean, the Human, HUEMAN.
Yeah. I got a shirt for you too.
Yeah,
before we get out of here.
I need that. I need that, bro. Appreciate you, bro. This has been
likewise,
a dope episode,
likewise.
bro.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you are planning an event or you are part of your organization's Black employee group and you are interested in having dope Black mental health professionals or myself come in and do a speaking engagement or a workshop or a keynote address or a panel, please click the link in our bio on Instagram or TikTok. Scroll down and click book us for speaking and brand deals and fill out the form available on our website. Once you fill out the form, one of our team members will get back to you about how we can collaborate and create something dope for your organization. This is an unparalleled opportunity. We are currently the largest Black men's mental health platform, and we have a few slots available for our calendar year, and we would love to partner with you to create something dope for your organization if it makes sense for both parties, right? So go to the link in our bio, scroll down, click book us for speaking and brand deals, and fill out that form. If you're not on Instagram, the link should be linked in our description of this episode. And it is also on our website. If you go to expressyourselfblackman.com/speaking-brand-deals. That's expressyourselfblackman.com/speaking-brand-deals. If you are looking for a therapist, a Black therapist, and you've had a hard time finding one, you've jumped from therapist to therapist, or you just don't know how to find a therapist, we are teaching a free webinar. It's completely free, taking you from not knowing how to find a therapist, not knowing where to search for therapists, struggling with finding good therapists for you, not knowing what to look for in therapists, teaching you all of those different things, and also giving you the opportunity at the end of the webinar to be connected with one of our safe haven healers who are Black mental health professionals so that you do not have to go through the struggles of finding a Black therapist alone anymore, right? So if you're interested in that, you want to get connected with a Black mental health professional at the end of the webinar, or you just want to learn how to find a Black therapist by yourself, you can sign up for the free webinar. It's linked in our bio on Instagram and TikTok. You just click that free webinar link once you click the link in our bio and fill out the form. You can also find it on our website at expressyourselfblackman.com/links and fill out the form there for our next webinar session. If you're not interested in any of that, right, but you know someone that may be interested in it, all we ask is that you please share it. If you want some of the merch that we show on the platform all the time, that we're wearing on the platform all the time, you can shop it at shop.expressyourselfblackman.com. And once again, we just want to say thank you so much for watching this episode. Thank you so much for supporting us. Please, if you are on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe, comment. If you're listening to this on an audio platform, please leave a review. It helps us out greatly. Thank you so much for your support. We're wishing you nothing but the best and sending you and your family and your loved ones love and light. Peace.